uh, in 2004, I wrote a story called Skyborg. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to paraphrase that story, or I'm going to kind of condense it and make it very short to the point where you can grasp the theme or the core of the story. Now, Skyborg died and found himself in hell. So when he got into hell, he became so evil, so wicked, so viciously merciless that he rose in rank, rapidly rose in rank. He became Satan's assistant. The next guy to Satan was Skyborg. After years in hell of being so evil, despicable things that he did, apparently earned him the position to be Satan's assistant. Now that's not an easy thing to do, but apparently Skyborg achieved that goal, which was his goal when he got into hell, because he didn't want anyone else to be telling him what to do, or he wanted to have power. He was so power conscious. But he was determined to gain that power by any way, any form, any means. So this actually led Skyborg into becoming an alcoholic, a drug addict, a womanizer, you name it. He did all the evil things and bad things you can imagine. Some of those things were actually beyond belief. Did so bad that I wouldn't even want to mention it here, just in case kids want to listen to what I'm saying. Okay. Now, so he couldn't sleep at night, he couldn't eat, he became restless, irritable, uh, agitated all the time. I mean, he was sick to the stomach after years of being so evil, so wicked in hell. So one day he was crossing the street, and by some kind of accident, something snapped inside Skyborg. When he saw these kids, three young dudes, beating on this old lady, Skyborg ran straight across the street, ran across the street, beat up the kids, and they ran away. So he helped the lady rise. He lifted the lady up and asked her if she was okay and all that, and and helped her across the street. And the lady said she was okay, and she thanked Skyborg for coming to her aid. Anyway, that night when Skyborg got back home, he was in such high spirit. He felt so good that night. He didn't need to drink alcohol. He didn't need to smoke whatever drugs that he smoked or inhaled or sniffed or whatever it is. He did not need to do anything other than just be happy, and then he slept like a baby for the first time as far as he could remember in his entire life in hell. Wow. Skyward helping somebody, that's unheard of. So he woke up the next morning feeling all good about himself, feeling so wonderfully good that he decided to go and do the same thing to anyone that would need. So he went out there looking and he helped other people. Anyway, the news spread like wildfire in hell that Skyborg, who is supposed to be Satan's assistant, is doing good. Guess what happened? Satan calls him up and says, "Hey, Skyborg, what am I hearing? This is hell. No one is allowed to do good in hell. This is my territory, and you know how you got to be my assistant? By your deeds." He says, "I don't believe what I'm hearing, and I don't want to hear it, because if I hear it and I prove that it's true, you know what we're going to do to you? So you do not spread that kind of thing in hell. No kindness, no compassion, no generosity, nothing, because this is hell. Understood?" Skyborg says, "Yes, sir." So he goes home that night, sleeps. He could hardly sleep. He woke up next day and tried to go back, resort to the evil ways. recidivism, or whatever you want to call it. So his criminal acts and all that stuff, he tried to resort back to that. But then he went home that night and he became restless and started drinking and feeling bad, and even at one point regurgitated because he couldn't handle it. What a transformation. So he decided the next day that he was going to continue doing good because that made him feel good. So he tried it again and he felt so much better than he did the first time. He kept doing good. You can't do that in hell, but Skyborg was doing it anyway. What a man that went from the most wicked man after Satan into being kind and generous and gentle and caring and forgiving and loving. The news spread to Satan again. He had Skyborg videotaped, and then he saw it. He says, you know what? Guys, just go take him to court, which is the procedure. So they took him to a kangaroo court and found him guilty on all charges. He was charged with treason, trying to spread kindness and compassion in hell, undermining Satan's regime, spreading propaganda of love, and all these things in hell. Guess what? His punishment was, after they found him guilty of all charges, they took him to the gates of doom, which is the highest pinnacle, the highest point in hell. And guess what they do to you? They just throw you out of that gate. Then you come tumbling down to earth at such high velocity. So Skyborg, after he was tried in court, was found guilty of all those charges, took him to the pinnacle and threw him off. Skyborg was it. That was it. He was coming down, falling down such high velocity, intense speed, that he could feel his body temperature rising. He thought he was going to burn. He reluctantly closed his eyes. He says he was talking to himself in his mind and his heart, actually saying, I don't want to see where I'm going to die. I don't want to see the point of impact. So he closed his eyes so tight, shut his eyes. And he was falling down. Imagine coming from high up there, tumbling down with nothing, free falling. And then at some point, with his eyes closed, he felt like he was not moving anymore. And his body temperature came back down. And he felt some kind of peace overwhelmed him. He was overwhelmed, engulfed in peace and tranquility. So reluctantly, he opened his eyes. And guess what? He found himself flying upon the back of an angel. And he couldn't believe it. As soon as he opened his eyes, the angel said to him, Skyborg. He said, how do you know my name? He said, yeah, I know. It says, God has sent me. God sent me to come and rescue you. He was like, how does he know? He says, God knows everything. He made the heavens and earth and everything. So he sees everything. He knows everything. Day to God is like light. Light to God is just the same. Light. He knows everything. He can see through your heart, through your mind, everything he knows. But he doesn't impose. He saw how you went from being kind, from being evil, excessively, extremely evil, wicked to the point of disgust, and how you changed and became such a wonderful and humble and loving and caring individual. It says God does reward good deeds and good heart and good mind. So he sent me to come and rescue you, Skyborg, he says. The angel's name was Lovey. He says, when I depart from you, Skyborg, you're going to grow wings. And those wings will disappear at will appear at will. All you got to do is just will, and you'll have the wings instantaneously. And then you could will it, and the wings will disappear. So wow! And all of a sudden, Lovey disappeared from Skyborg, and then Skyborg just thought about the wings, and there he was, flying, flying with gold wings and diamonds in them. And guess what, kids? It was so exciting. He could see all the beauties of the world, all the beautiful flowers, all the oceans, all the trees. He could smell them. And even the birds became jealous, kids. The birds became jealous of Skyborg, and they were so happy. Some of them were so excited. The birds started taking pictures of Skyborg as he was flying in the air. So eventually, after circling around and seeing the beauty and the majesty of God's creation from up there like a bird with the freedom of flying, he comes down and finds a place underneath a rock that was very ideal for him to rest. So he made that little place underneath the rock his abode. Right next to the rock, there was a yard, a compound with a fence. And in this compound lived a kid called James and his sister, Safi. So Safi and James were playing football. Safi, of course, is a good girl. She doesn't know much about football, but James loved to play football, even though he wasn't that good, but he liked it. So apparently Safi threw the ball a little too high, and the ball went over the fence and just went and dropped right next to where Skyborg was staying. Skyborg was under the rock looking. And all of a sudden, this kid runs around. James goes around to pick up the ball, and he sees Skyborg. And he says, no. He says, James, I know you. I know your name. I've heard your name. I've heard your sister call your name. I'm not going to hurt you. He says, I will never hurt you. He said, I promise and I swear I'll never hurt you. He says, okay. And James says, okay, reluctantly. He says, I heard your sister too, Safi. You see? He says, I'm going to be here for a while, James. He says, I'm never going to hurt you. I don't hurt kids, and I will never hurt you. So James was like, whoa. I'm going to go tell mom. He said, no. Don't tell your mom. Don't tell anybody, James. And all of a sudden, James' mother, Liz, started calling out James' name. James! James! Where are you? Come back home. Come back here. And James answered, Mommy, I came to fetch my ball. I'll be right there. I got the ball. So Skyborg tells James, shh, don't tell anyone. We're going to be friends, James. He says, we're going to help each other, but don't tell anyone, okay? And for some reason, James believed Skyborg. He says, okay. He says, my name is Skyborg. He says, so when can I see you again? He says, I'll be back tomorrow after school. I mean, kids, remember, don't talk to strangers. This is a story, all right? Don't talk to strangers. Don't. And so the kid goes home and doesn't tell anyone. The next day after school, he comes around, sneaks out, comes on to speak with Skyborg. So James and Skyborg become pals. Well, James was one of these a little below average kids in school. But Skyborg started instilling positive thoughts into James, making James believe in himself so positively that all of a sudden, a few months down the line, James went from C minus, C plus grade into A, starting having A. And his football was kind of average, a little below average. He wasn't even in the school team. And all of a sudden, he started doing tracks and field, and he became a top football player in school. But at the same time, James was rubbing some of these things onto his younger sister.